At the end of his tenure with the Rockets, many argued that Chris Paul's career was headed downhill, citing his monster contract or incompatibility with James Harden and Houston's isolation-centric offense. This season, though, Paul has led the energized Thunder to a 40-24 record and the 5th seed in the West. What's changed? And how good is the 35-year-old point guard? Within OKC's more traditional offense, Paul's reinvigorated himself as one of the best and most efficient pick-and-roll playmakers in the league. Here, he gets Shamet leaning with a looping behind the back dribble, so Landry goes to take the efficient route under the screen. By using a hesitation to sell a pull-up three, Paul forces Shamet over, and it's too late to catch up. He counters defenders with dribble moves that are meant to send them into the screener, or make them try to fight around it in an inefficient path. On this one, Tatum is trying to funnel Paul middle, where the Celtics have all their help defenders because of OKC's spacing. By shifting his wave forward and then pulling the ball back quickly, he sells a potential drive enough to disorient Tatum and create space. Also note Steven Adams getting contact on the screen by leaning forward. Here, he patiently waits for Derek White to choose a side, and once White commits, he's way behind, forcing Aldridge to divert attention and opening up a laydown. He takes an action-reaction approach, reading help defenders on the roll man to hit a corner skip pass, or bouncing a textbook pocket pass. Paul isn't concerned with his direct defender, he's planning moves in advance. Tatum is the key guy here, split between the rolling big and Gallinari in the corner. He notices Tatum help over to cover a potential lob, leaving open the corner, and it's right on the money. This mental mapping of the court becomes especially valuable because he engages defenders well, selling hard that he's going to do one thing, then, at the last second, finding his real target, who he knew was going to be open the whole time. This is a great example. After blowing by Ibaka, he exposes the ball towards the corner, making McCaw commit and leaving a wide open Gallinari, which is a shot the Thunder are happy about creating. We've already seen Paul as the commander-in-chief of Lob City, and although OKC's bigs aren't as vertically gifted, they are capable finishers of Paul's deliveries. It really helps to have a mammoth screen setter in Steven Adams, who understands his point guard's pick-and-roll philosophy well. Notice him re-screening and readjusting to maximize CP's open space. All these factors place Paul as the second most efficient pick-and-roll ball handler in the league among players who average at least 5 possessions per game, only trailing behind Damian Lillard. In Houston, Paul had an education in isolation. In Oklahoma City, they run more conventional offensive sets, high stagger screens, dribble handoffs, and some pistol actions. And although they do run more traditional offensive plays, their multi-guard lineups are unique. Schroeder, SGA, and Paul all average about the same number of pick-and-roll possessions per game, which is really uncommon, but it seems to work in the half-court. I think it's good for CP at this stage in his career to be able to delegate some of his creation load to his younger teammates. Last year with the Rockets, he took an equal split of shots from 3-point and 2-point range. That was the highest frequency of threes he had taken his entire career, and it probably hurt his overall efficiency. His true shooting percentage was exactly league average. This season though, Paul's tweaked his shot selection to now taking 2/3 of his shots from mid-range. This increase in volume has improved his shooting numbers from inside the arc, and his overall offensive efficiency has risen too, shooting 4.5% above league average. Paul sets up these mid-range attempts in a number of ways. He likes to snake the pick and roll, darting under and across the screen to find a reliable area to fire pull-up jumpers, or create an angle for a dump-off to his rolling big. When opponents set up in deep drop coverage, he can walk into mid-range pull-ups and is perfectly happy taking them until the defense decides to apply more pressure. I like how he throws in a little pass fake to momentarily freeze the defending big. Teams will sometimes put lengthy wings on Paul, which can affect him, but his clever screen manipulation and quick first step are enough to create little pockets of space. He responds to long defenders by adding extra arc on his jumper, and he has soft touch. What makes him so deadly on offense is his situational awareness. This awareness comes into play when looking at his foul drawing. If you've watched Chris Paul for any extended amount of time, you'll know that he draws fouls ruthlessly, hitting the brakes on defenders jogging back, exaggerating little bumps if a defender is too close for his comfort, falling down on his jumper if they contest too tightly, you name it. His ultimate tactic, though, is the rip-through. Notice how defenders crowding him when navigating screens are recipients of the rip-through treatment. It's hard to escape the move as a defender because you're so conditioned to wedge yourself between the ball handler and the screener. Thanks in part to former member of the Thunder, Kevin Durant, and then later appropriated by other stars, the NBA made the move a non-shooting foul after the 2010-11 season. However, Paul mentally keeps track of when his opponents are near or in the penalty, and it's made him into the league leader in non-shooting fouls that resulted in free throws. And he's got nearly 20 on second place with Anthony Davis's 75. These floor fouls are a clever way for him to get to the free throw line without having to put pressure on the rim, which is much tougher for him athletically these days. This mix of pick and roll knowledge, shot making, and elite foul drawing has turned him into one of the NBA's most productive closers. In clutch situations, Paul's shot the third highest volume, and he's fourth in true shooting percentage among players with at least 40 attempts. If we account for any foul inflation at the end of games, he's still eighth in effective field goal percentage. And even though it is a small sample size, his late game heroics are valuable when you consider that 2/3 of OKC's games have been within 5 points in the last 5 minutes. On defense, it's fair to say he's regressed some. His lateral quickness has decreased over the years, so this affects him in point of attack situations. Here, Murray pretty much walks by him. It can also affect him when navigating screens. I usually like his off-ball work though. He positions himself well at the nail, here stunting with a purpose and disrupting Kawhi's attack middle. And he's always been feisty. He makes up for his lack of size by being aggressive on the ball, using his hands to claw at offensive players and often frustrating them or coming up with steals as a result. This scrappy nature leads him to gamble at times, cheating over on unsuspecting bigs, or blowing up dribble handoffs. Paul ranks in the top 15 in steal rate, but the stat doesn't include mistakes. Here, his attempt leaves Tatum, an elite three-point shooter, wide open. I would describe Paul's defensive energy as a conservation situation. On this one, he basically doesn't play any defense at all. But I chalk this up as a natural defensive evolution for him to keep up his offensive load at age 35. I think he's probably neutral as a defender overall. Solid on ball when engaged and a decent team defender, but he's just simply not involved enough as an energy conserving guard to really move the needle. He ranks well in some basic defensive stats, but I wouldn't put too much weight into them because they only tell you a small portion of what's actually happening defensively that Paul is causing. Paul rates highly in impact metrics, and they place him safely among the top 10 players in the league. I would personally say he's in the 10 to 20 range if I were to rank him today. But one thing that really stuck out to me was his longevity. In multi-year impact metrics, he's pretty much as good as you could possibly be. And these are the seasons of a player who's generously 6 feet tall and safely past his prime. Appreciate anyone who watched this video, and I've also linked in the description articles and resources that were helpful throughout the research process. Specifically articles from Seth Partnow, Eric Horn, and John Schumann.